Hey guys, so this is a little PSA for my friends and my peeps that follow my work, those interested in my work, both in the work that I do with clients in the world, but also my own personal work and growth, those interested in my life. I appreciate you for your interest in being here. So this little share about why I am studying the tarot. This is the major arcana from the Tarot de Marseille. Why I'm studying the tarot, largely in guidance by a really cool guy named Luke Jermay, and also through some books, Rachel Pollack and Alexander Odohorsky and other resources. Why I'm studying the tarot, inspired to share for a reason that will become really part of this conversation, actually, the reason why I want to share. So the reason I want to share is a concern that people that follow my work might think I'm going all loopy, starting to believe in crazy shit, psychic, just getting disconnected from the world, future fortune telling the future. And so the reason I want to share is so that you don't think that, and you don't think that I'm going all crazy and distance yourself from my work. I want you to get that there's still a connection to the tangible, to the real, that I'm not losing my shit. And on a deeper level, my concern with you thinking that about me is actually part of the purpose why I'm studying the tarot. So let me fold it all back in and tell you the story about where I'm at and what I actually mean by that. So, in parallel with studying the tarot, I am audiobook reading slowly, because it's massive, a book by a brilliant guy named Ian McGilchrist, British dude, probably one of the smartest guys alive right now by my estimation, based on the people that I have read about, but take that for what it's worth. But he wrote a book called The Master and His Emissary, which I've been conscious of for a long time, but I've only finally decided to dip into it. So I'm making my way through that really slowly, rereading bits, re-listening to bits, and it's about the left and right hemisphere of the brain, and about how the left hemisphere in our brains today is dominant. It's where the most of our activity is, it's the way we orient ourselves, and he even goes so far as saying that our self-consciousness, our conscious sense of self, is really a left brain activity. And he talks about how the left brain is the part of our brain that hyper-focuses, that chunks things, that measures, that quantifies. It chunks things into pieces. It sees the world in a linear fashion, in a mechanistic way. And that has had an impact on the way we've created society, that society has become mechanistically dominant. Our cultural way of thinking, especially in the West, is very either or. And so I'm interested in this because he makes a similar argument that Nietzsche made many years ago, maybe, I don't even know, over 100 years ago, in his first kind of work. I would call it his magnum opus, which is The Birth of Tragedy. And in that, he talks about how society has moved in the direction of the Apollonian and away from the Dionysian. So he takes Apollo and Dionysus as Greek gods to articulate these two different ways of being in the world. So Apollo is the god of reason, and Dionysus was, well, essentially it was like Bacchus from the Roman god. It was the god of wine and drunkenness. You could say it represents chaos on one side and order on the other side. It's a very simple way of saying it. But Nietzsche was basically like, society used to be the dance of tension, the arc of tension between these two things, and we are moving more and more away from this balance, this dance, and collapsing into a purely Apollonian way of being. And so there's been arguments for this in philosophy. Heidegger talks about this similar kind of idea. And so McGilchrist is saying, yes, this is happening, and it's not only happening out there in the world, it's also happening in the hemisphere of our brain and the dominance of our brain. So culture is changing and our brain is changing. And which one goes first? It's chicken and egg. They kind of feed into the other. One creates the other. And so with my interest in creating a more beautiful world, that's a world that's more balanced between these chaos and order ways of being. You could say chaos and order is just one way of saying it. In McGilchrist, in the brain sense, it's seeing the whole versus seeing the parts, right? And so if I want society to be more balanced in its way of seeing the whole and seeing the parts, then my personal path to changing the world is to change the world within me, because I am a contribution. I'm a part of that whole. And so I think that's the lowest hanging fruit for me, is changing me. And so if I can rebalance my capacity to be hemispherically balanced, not operating just from my left rational see the parts hemisphere, and I can be connected more with my right hemisphere, seeing the whole, then I'm creating a more beautiful world from the inside out. And that's just my path, that's my means. I also do that with my clients. I help them create a more beautiful world inside them, and then it goes out of them. So there is an external leverage to my approach to making a more beautiful and better world. But my primary focus is always here. I am the product in my work. And so the tarot is a tool that I experience as giving me access to right hemisphere activity. As it's a way of connecting more with the Dionysian. So let's flesh that out a little bit. What do I mean by right hemisphere Dionysian? I've already said seeing the whole, but I could also say intuition, right? It's not about figuring out in logic and reason. It's about something that where we just get an insight. We get an idea, we get a possibility, and then we can't logically, rationally explain it. That's what the left brain does. There's just a knowing that arises in us. Some people call it intuition, some call it spirit, some call it God. We could say it's the right hemisphere. We could say in Nietzschean terms, it's the connection to the Dionysian aspect of our being, or the Dionysian forces in the universe, right? Whatever you want to call it. You could call it channeling, right? I have a client that calls it Channel 8, baby. I love it. Love you. So, connecting with that aspect of being, that aspect of the universe, for me happens through the tarot as it's an effective tool to get my left brain offline. It's a bridge. So in each of these images, I mean, they're just drawings, right? Like, and everybody there's no like definitive, lost to history. If there ever was a definitive explanation for what these things means, it's lost to history. There's no like Rosetta Stone that says that's what they mean. So everybody's got a fucking idea. Everybody's got an opinion, but the thing is, there's a cultural idea about what we have, like a king, right? Like, okay, we all have shared ideas around that. So there's both a shared collective energy around some of these ideas, but also everybody that holds cards and looks at them projects their own ideas into them. So they're tools of projection. By looking at them and seeing what I see in them, I actually see myself. But I don't see it in such a logical way. I'm not figuring it out. I'm looking at them and then ideas are arising. And so the more I be with them, the more I access my capacity to get to know who I am and what's occurring inside my mind in a way that's non-rational, non-linear. And so doing a tarot reading to me is not about predicting the future that's predestined and pre-written. It's not about being psychic. It's actually about connecting with my intuitive knowing about what is and my imagination about what could be in a way that's non-linear, that's chaotic, that's a little bit it's non-rational, right? It's intuitive. It's spiritual. Not because that's the truth and the left brain is wrong, but because I want to have a balance. I'm trying to tip the scale in my own way of being more in that direction. And one of the reasons I know this is useful for me is because I experience resistance to it, right? And so, how could I do that if it's not rational? You'd have to make sense. I grew up as a kid just thinking I had to make sense and be able to explain myself in order for it to be justified. Of course I did, because I grew up in the Western world. I went to school, I got grades. If you can't prove it, I mean, science is my background. Mathematics and physics I studied for years. Scientific method is like inculcated as my way of operating. And so if I want to not overcome that where I throw it out, but create a dance between that way of being and thinking and also acting intuitively, right? Then I want to get reacquainted with that way of being. And tarot for me is proving to be a tool that can help me to do that. It's like it's a tool that tricks my conscious, self-conscious, linear mind into letting go so that its arrogance, as my friend James called it, can be put aside, and I can actually just trust in the unfolding of possibilities and ideas. So when I pull 3 cards for me or for my wife or for a friend, and I look at them and I just speak whatever is coming to mind, it's not logical or rational, and I speak and there's a coherence to it, and then there's an insight and there's an action that can be taken from that insight that creates something in the direction of a possibility that's creating from right hemispheric Dionysian aspect of possibility instead of a left hemispheric linear rational aspect of probability. And so I've talked about this in the past too, creating from possibility, not from probability, creating from the nonlinear, chaotic, intuitive aspect of ourselves more than the linear, rational aspect of ourselves. It's not one or the other, it's both and. And I'm tipping the scales, and Tarot is proving to be a really fun tool to learn how to do that. So if you want to learn about tarot, go for it. You can join Luke and his group, Luke Jermay, Talking Tarot, or you can buy a book, talk to your friends, I don't know, whatever you want to do. But look for, I would say, if anything, explore ways to rebalance the Apollonian and Dissonant, left and right, material and spirit worlds in yourself. It doesn't look like you're out of balance because you are coherent with a culture and a society that is out of balance, but there's a greater balance to be had than what is the norm. I was going to say something else about that, but I don't remember what it was. If it comes back to me, I'll make another video. Most of all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for following my work. Thank you for your interest. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.